Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be reviewing my predictions and hopium list that I made a couple of days ago. We'll see what made it into the patch, what didn't make it in, and we'll use those points as a sort of springboard to talk about what we think of the patch, what I think will come of the patch. And fair bit of warning, this isn't going to be too in-depth. I'm not concerned with going into too much of a deep dive. I like seeing and playing through the changes and see what sticks out to me naturally. I'm also not a person that really goes through path of building templates beforehand. I like to make up my I like to build my characters on the fly, basically. Also, I have gone through the patch notes, but I don't think it's worth talking about the skill changes and nerfs and buffs that much until you've actually played it, because things are always busted at first, and we know that they tend to nerf things a lot at the start of every patch so that they don't have to nerf again, and then depending on how poorly some things perform, they buff it over time during the patch. And for a beta test game, I expect as much. So I'm not really that bothered. Despite being a warrior main, a lover of the warrior class, I'm not that bothered about any of the nerfs preemptively. We'll play through it and we'll see. But yeah, I have a tendency to ramble, so let's get straight into it. So I predicted that the druid is definitely in. And I recall mentioning that I would be very surprised if it wasn't. Well, I'm very surprised it didn't make it in. I did see the explanation for it. They explained it almost a few weeks before release on Darth Microtransactions interview with Jonathan and Mark. They said that it simply didn't make it in due to a lot of the animation issues. And I get it. They talked about how every shapeshift requires a bunch of animations, and they would either have to focus on all of that or not work as hard on the act. And I think they made the right decision in delaying the druid. I'm sure people would be very angry, especially for a class as anticipated as the druid. I'm sure people would have been very angry if it turned out that it was in a poor condition to start out with. People really didn't like the Amazon when it came out. So the Huntress, sorry, the Amazon is one of the ascendancies. People were very bothered by the Huntress class when it came out. They thought it was a little undercooked, and they improved it over time, but by then everyone had stopped playing. Although I do think this patch will have longer staying power for the players. But yeah, straight off the bat, let's oh dear. Let's just over this in red. So that didn't make it in. Act 4 is definitely in. New bosses are a giveaway, as well as Act 4 being playable at Blade Exalcon, etc, etc. This one made it in. If this hadn't made it in, I would have been very surprised. But yeah, seeing an Act 4 is great news. I'm also very happy with the interludes. I really did not want to have to go back and play Cruel Acts again. Even if the interludes are going through the same biomes as we've played in before, the fact that you can do them in any order you want, and they serve as just a bridge to the end game, I think that's a solid idea, and I'm glad they went for that. There'll be new bosses, there'll be new things to deal with. They also will be bringing a lot of the new art assets that come with Act 4, so we're going to have more weapons to play around with, and that's always good. I would have loved it if we had Act 5 in there as well, but just gives me more reason to anticipate the next patch, I guess. So this one definitely made it in. Oh god. Hang on. Alright. The armor rework. Now, I talked about how the new class being a strength int class would mean they would have to go back and take a look at armor again. And I guess they did. It seems like they're not changing up too much. One thing that did surprise me was they talked about how evasion seemed to be the weakest of the three defenses to them, which is an interesting observation. I'm not going to claim to know more than them. They probably have the stats in front of them and saw that more people were dying. I think we forget how the average player experiences the game. Like, I talk about how I'm a bad player, but I'm sure that compared to a lot of the newer players or the average base, even I, with my horrible death ratio, would probably be a more knowledgeable and better player than the vast majority. So maybe there are things going on there that we don't know about. We'll see. But basically the biggest change was that armor would now also block us from taking elemental damage, but they've also tied it to a stat which we will have to roll on our items, which kind of makes me curious to see how it'll work out. Now, they have added more crafting options. We'll get into that in the later parts of the points I made, but I mean, we'll see how it works out. I'm excited to test it out. I'm excited to see how it works, and I'll probably be going armor evasion anyway. I'll be probably throwing in a little bit of dex in there as well, since I like the mercenary side of the tree as well. There's a lot of attack speed buffs and whatnot. So we'll see how it works out. But armor rework, it's here. We'll see how good or bad it is, and I'm looking forward to trying it out. So maybe I should stop with the coloring thing. I'm not even sure what it accomplishes, but we've done it so far. We'll do it every single time. Tree rework. The strength inside of the tree was probably placeholders. I expected a shake-up and maybe some other changes to the strength side of things. Oh boy, did we get changes. If you watch the presentation they gave on the patch, they had a before and after slide for the current state of the skill tree and the after state of the skill tree, and there were a lot of smaller and notable nodes being added, like they actually showed the warrior side of the tree. That was where the focus was, and there were a lot of things that were added. I didn't go too deeply into it because, again, I want it to be kind of a surprise, and they don't really go into too much detail in the patch notes either, but I'm excited. So what I was a little worried about with the armor rework, I'm actually positive a little bit when it comes to the tree changes. I'm sure there will be more options there, some things that we can work with more. Now, I know people are angry at the Giant's Blood nerf, I'll say. For those of you who don't know, Giant's Blood allows you to equip two-handed weapons in each hand, but in return, all weapon requirements, all the stat requirements for all the weapons would be 3 times as much. So, it was already quite a heavy tax to pay, but now apparently the bonus we get to our health from strength is halved, and people are rightfully upset by this, but there must be a reason for it. Like there's no reason they would just do that for nothing. So either the changes affect that in some way, or there are more ways to get life. Maybe there are better ways to strengthen incoming damage. We'll see. I'm reserving judgment until I actually play with it. We'll see. But I'm not that unhappy with the changes because I'm really looking forward to exploring the new tree. So that actually made it in. All ascendancies for the remaining classes released, at least in a primitive form. This did not end up happening. They only went through all the classes we already have, the ascendancies, and they decided to work on what they had and make sure everything worked better before adding in new things, which is fine. Honestly, it's fine. I saw there were a lot of changes to Infernalist, and we had some changes with the Chayula class on the... I think I mentioned in my previous video how that seemed very weak, and maybe they would have to go around and change some of the weaker ones. It appears that they did. I was surprised that there aren't a lot of changes with the Chronomancer. I guess they'll do a pass on those later, another time. But so far, they're buffing some of the weaker and most unused ascendancies, I'd say. So, yeah, you know, fine. The new trial. I was sure we would get the new trial. I am very surprised that we haven't. They said there's a lot of work to do on it still. And seeing as it's not just an end game thing, like it is in Path of Exile 1, seeing how it's basically a core part of the game, how we'll be taking our ascendancies, I understand them wanting to spend a lot more time with it. So I'm willing to wait. He also mentioned how, I think Jonathan mentioned how there were a lot of things that they were considering that they needed to add in and test beforehand, which is important. I don't want another case of the what was it, the Trial of Chaos? Something like the Trial of Chaos, where it comes out ridiculously difficult to deal with, and then they have to play around with it a lot of times. Let them test it to the best of their abilities, and then we'll take a look at it. A little disappointed, though. A little disappointed, because that does mean that I still have to go through the Trial of Chaos, and I hate the Trial of Chaos. And they didn't mention anything about changing that, so we'll see. 2 or maybe 3 new Pinnacle bosses. And then I explained that one of them would be the League mechanic, something to do with the acts, and one with the new trial. Well, it turns out we are getting a bunch of Pinnacle bosses, and I think they mentioned more than 3. Apparently, a lot of the bosses we're going to get for the interlude acts, they're going to be uber endgame versions of them. I think they mentioned in one of the interviews, either Darth Microtransactions interview or the one they gave with ZD. Either one, they mentioned it. So this one makes it in. I'm curious to see how they do. Generally, I die before I get to the Pinnacle bosses, so we'll see if we get to see it this time around. Abyss is rumored, as well as Delve. Well, we don't get Delve, but we do get Abyss. Expect there to be some form of chance at Subterranean map progression and Abyss Jewels. So Abyss Jewels didn't quite make it in, but we do get socketables anyway, both unique and, I think, regular socketables. So that kind of made it in. And they also increased the amount of slots we could get, the amount of sockets we can get in the items, I believe. So that'll be fun to deal with. I actually like everything they've done with Abyss. They've added a crafting component onto it, and in the video I remember talking about how Abyss in Path of Exile 1 didn't really have any crafting component to it, so it will be interesting to see what they add with this. Well, they're going to be adding basically the same mechanic from Path of Exile 1, where we unveil certain modifiers. It gives us a choice. When we have one unveiled affix, and then when you try to unveil it, it'll give you an option between 3 different choices of what that affix could be. And it's actually an extremely critical part of crafting in Path of Exile 1, so having that here, and apparently it's available in the axe as well, so, you know, that's good. And we're getting Abyss pretty early. I think they said the Abyss cave, the cave we would go in for Abyss, would be in Act 4, so we should be able to modify our items starting from Act 4, which is fine. I'm willing to try it out. Also, it means a lot more monsters on the screen, which I'm excited about. I also predict myself dying to this a bunch of times. So, yeah, I can't say I'm looking too forward to dying, but I do like a little bit of a challenge, so we'll see. New unique items. We'll probably get a new version of the Darkness Enthroned Belt. I want to say I called this, even though it was the most obvious thing that they would do, but still, I called it. Darkness Enthroned is in, and it's even better than the Path of Exile 1 version. Basically, your belt can be either your helmet or your chest piece or your boots or whatever, and it counts as one of those, so anything you socket into it, if it gives bonuses for those slots, you get a higher percentage of that happening. So technically, you could have 2 boot slots, and I think that means you can move a lot quicker. We'd have to see, but that's what I got out of it. So looking forward to trying that out, if I can ever drop one. No mention about the Impulse's Broken Heart, though, so, you know. But hey, it was a pretty good prediction. Alright. New endgame crafts. Maybe Blessed Orbs and other implicit modifying currencies. I severely underestimated how much they would change the crafting, and I think there's something here in the Hopium section that we will talk about more with crafting, but for now, yes, they do have a lot of new endgame crafts. Nothing with Blessed Orbs, though, I will say, and I'm not sure about anything modifying implicit currencies, but still, we get new endgame crafts. I'll talk about that a little more in detail later on. God damn it. I've messed this highlighting part up a million times. Anyway, Looking forward to the new weapon types and graphics with the new act. I mean, I'm not even sure if it's worth highlighting this, because it's obvious that it would arrive with the act, but still, it's going to be good to see it regardless. Now for the hopium section. New melee weapon, hoping for sword, but unlikely since they would not want to reveal that with the gladiator duelist class. Axe would be great, any melee weapon would be great. Well, we got nothing. So, that one's a miss. However, they did add a bunch of skills to every weapon type, even to the mace. And they've buffed what we already have, the ones that were underused or some of the skills that people weren't really using that much. They buffed a few of those, so we'll see. I'm interested to see what they do with those. Expand Orb of Annulments to maybe take away more affixes. Addition of alterations. This one, I'm actually not going to mark this. I'm going to keep this like this because it's kind of a half-half. No, we did not get any expansions to the Orb of Annulment, and we didn't get the alterations added. However, what we did get is a lot of tiers to your basic currencies. There are new Orbs of Transmutations that will drop greater Orbs of Transmutation, which will guarantee your initial affixes rolled by that currency to be above a certain threshold, which gives you a lot of deterministic crafting at the end game. That's great news. They've also changed, and I'll talk about that a little bit because I know we have something talking about how the currency drops in the campaign need to be better, but they changed a bunch of stuff with the essences that I really liked, and I think it'll make a significant improvement to our crafting opportunities in the game. Oh, here we go. More drops for lower tier currencies for campaign progressions. Drop lower level Orbs of Alchemy that are more abundant in the campaign that only works on items under level 50 or 60 or so. This one I'm also not going to highlight because it's a little half and half. What they did do instead of giving us like more Orbs of Alchemy or whatever it is, they actually approached the problem in a different way. The reason why Orb of Alchemy is so good is because you can take your normal item that you're only going to use for a few levels in the campaign, your white item, and you slap that Orb of Alchemy on it, and it not only does it turn into a rare, but it gives you 4 affixes off the top of your head. Well, now with transmutes, once we've got our transmute and our augment on the items, and we get 2 affixes that we're relatively happy with, what you would end up doing is not being sure if it's worth slamming a regal on top of that, unless you got the 2 perfect affixes that you want to get. Because regals were very hard to come by. I think I mentioned this in the previous video, I would farm chests, yellow chests, over and over again, like a billion times, just to, for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, just to drop enough yellow items, enough rare items, so that I can disenchant them into regal orbs, so I would have enough regal orbs to apply them, and I would still be scared to apply them, because what if one of the first 2 affixes you roll aren't what you want? Do you risk the regal anyway? Do you not? Well, essences will now make the item, they are essentially regal orbs themselves now, they will make the magic item a rare item, and they will guarantee 1 type of affix, which is incredible. I'm really looking forward to that. So not only are we getting an item into a rare status, we're also choosing what one of the affix will be, so that's some determination right there that will help a lot. And considering that we probably will have one of the 2 initial affixes to be what we want, that'll probably end up with us having at least 2 affixes that we really want before we continue crafting with them further on. And with other stuff like the unveiling and whatnot, it'll be even more deterministic. So overall, it's good. But we have to play, we have to see. But I'm actually very excited for this. So yeah, using essences. I would also kind of be afraid to use my essences, but and Jonathan explained that when he was playing through his characters, he would just not use the essences at all, and he asked himself why he wasn't doing it. It's just it wasn't worth it until certain points of the game, but until then you basically had to suffer through it, which is basically what I mentioned before. So yeah, a lot of yapping to say I'm excited for this. Next up, Some map reworks for previous acts, making some of the larger maps less mazy and smaller in size. Especially modifications to Act 3 would be incredible. So we didn't get that exactly, but what we did get instead is sprinting. Now I'm a little cagey on sprinting, especially playing in hardcore. It does seem like in certain areas, if you are hit while sprinting and you fall on the ground, there is a serious chance that you'll end up dying. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to potion while we're on the ground. I think we should be, but we'll see how that shakes out. Overall, it's fine for backtracking. I guess I'll be using it a lot for backtracking, but for the campaign itself, we'll see how well that works. Also, when we're sprinting, we'll see if the evasion stats work for it. My worry is if evasion works on your character when you're sprinting, then stacking evasion and the new mechanic they have, which is basically spell suppression, but for Path of Exile 2, where you will negate up to half of, when you do get hit, you will negate up to 40% of the damage you take. I'm wondering if the evasion also applies to hits you receive when you're sprinting. And if you have high enough evasion, you can basically run around without worrying about getting hit at all. In which case, it would make evasion very powerful, and compared to stuff like armor and energy shield, but we'll see how that shakes out. But overall, sprinting, it's fine. I need to play it to see how well it is. So, I'm positively neutral on that. Too many negative sides on the skill tree. I don't know if this is in. We would have to see what the skill tree looks like now. They didn't mention any of that specifically, and I don't think anyone asked them questions about this. I wish they were asked this, but we'll find out for ourselves soon enough. But I'm hoping that a lot of the negative sides are removed, or at least reworked to something more manageable. At least on the smaller passives, there shouldn't be any negative sides. On some notables, maybe I get it, but in an ideal world, we would only get negatives on keystones. So we'll see how that works. Charges are underwhelming. Passive effects would help immensely. Need more function than just builder spender function as of now. Aren't fun to get or manage. So there's no change to any of this, which is a little disappointing, but I'm very sure that eventually, either just before release or after release, eventually they will change this and add passive effects to the charges like they have in Path of Exile 1, because I think this just doesn't feel complete in the game. This just feels undercooked, and it feels like a little bit of a wishful thinking from their side, from the GGG side, and they're going to try and see how far they can push it. But one positive thing I will say is, with the amounts of new support gems we're getting, it looked, and with what they showed, the small little bits of gameplay they did show, it does look like it's going to be very easy to get our charges going, which is also good, because I would also... Power charges would be fine to get, but you would be very limited. The endurance charges were both weak, kind of useless, and hard to get. And the frenzy charges were also very... I thought, unless you used a specific... I believe it was a specific support gem that I don't remember the name of right now, but it was also hard to get those charges going as well. But even if you did get the charges, actually spending them, you would be better off spamming one of the other skills, one of the faster skills, or in the case of a lot of ranger and warrior characters, spamming auto attack was just better than most things. And I think spamming auto attack for warrior is still going to be a lot better. But we'll see how it shakes out. No Cruel Act 3. Hopefully we only need to do Cruel Act 1 and 2 only, or maybe just start maps right after the end of Act 4. Maps would start at lower levels, would also help test the endgame more. This is basically, what they ended up doing is basically a halfway. They're going to be giving us interlude acts, which are basically going to be a bunch of maps that we clear in whatever order we want. I'm considering that to be early maps. So we also get new bosses and whatnot, so it looks like it's early maps. So I'll take this as a green and take this as a win for me. Rework of endgame map juicing. Tablets should work everywhere with towers They should just give us vision of where the bosses or other big endgame events are. Maybe have a hard unique boss with unique drops. So this, I'm going to mark this red, but it's not a lost cause. And we're also going to miss the end character, but whatever. It's not a lost cause because firstly, they did add a couple of things to towers. I think they mentioned it in the presentation. So there will be a little bit of a change to towers, but overall juicing will remain the same. However, they did say that maybe in the next patch they would be looking to change how things are. That they're aware of how much people hate the towers. They're aware of how limiting it is when it comes to juicing, and they will rework it eventually. So even though they're not doing it now, I always felt like they would get around to it eventually, and it looks like they will. I mean, look, they changed the support gem limitation. When they initially announced it, everyone was very hyped for it. Everyone thought, okay, that's a good idea, including myself. And honestly, until they changed it just before this patch in the presentation, for those of you who don't know, until now we could only use one support gem on one skill, but now we can use any support gems on any skills we want. So initially I was a little worried about that, thinking that we would just see the same gems all the time, but they did make a good point where some of the build enabling gems, such as the poison ones or the bleed ones, only being able to use them on one skill was very limiting, and that is precisely one of the main problems of bleed and poison and other dot builds. So I think it's going to be a positive for the game overall. And I think they will get around to towers and change how things are juiced in the end game. It's a given. I think they're proud of how Path of Exile 1 is and how much power it gives the player to run the content they want. Enough that they will eventually bring it to this game as well. And I'm okay with them trying things such as towers in their current iteration, as long as they're willing to change things up. And so far, they've been willing to change anything that received too many complaints or didn't work out the way they thought it would work out. So, yeah. Long story short, I think tower change is coming in the next patch. But they pretty much said as much. So, we'll see. Additions and rework to mace skills, still a little underwhelming. Only one of possible melee weapons. It's not fun to use. There shouldn't be there should be hard minimums to skill uses. So this actually did get reworked after all. We have a bunch of new mace skills, like the one where we throw a hammer and then you can recall it. And if you use a cry, it'll have a big effect. Also, they added a new war cry, I think a seismic cry. I forgot which one they added, but basically they added a bunch of stuff to mace skills, which will be fun to play around with. But more importantly, one line in the patch notes that was heavily criticized by mace enjoyers was how I think it was Leap. How Leap has its mandatory 0.9 second cooldown. Basically, there was a hard limit on how many times you could use Leap back to back, and it was a 0.9 second gap, and it was unscalable. And if you remember in the previous video, and I even made a video a long time ago about why I think mace skills suck, and I talked about how these arbitrary limits, these unscalable limits, work against the player and just make the mace skills unfun to use. Oh, sorry, it was Sunder that changed, not Leap. Sorry, it was Sunder that changed. So Sunder, you would only cast it at 65% of your attack speed, and on top of that, have to go through an 0.9 second delay before you use it again. Now they've made it even slower, so you're only casting it at 35% of your attack speed. But there's no hard limit on the second, so technically you could scale, by scaling your attack speed as high as possible, you could end up with a faster Sunder at the end game, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, they remove the mandatory critical you get if you break their armor and yada yada, but even that, I mentioned again in one of my older videos, even that's too conditional. I prefer just being able to just slam the ground over and over again. Maybe I don't even care about critical skills. Maybe I just want to do big flat damage in a wide area over and over again. I'm excited for it. I want to see how it works out. I can't wait to use Sunder with new scaling, and it just means that I'm going to have to get attack speed and skill speed nodes anywhere I can, which is what I will be aiming for with my first character when the patch comes out. So this, I think, is a win, and depending on how well it goes, I think they'll end up applying it to all the mace skills. I think if you invest in your character, you should be able to spam skills. That's the ultimate reason why we play ARPGs, to break it. It's why we enjoy Path of Exile 1 so much, because you can break things. So, you know, looking forward to it. We'll see. More drops and crafting options in the campaign. While the game shouldn't be balanced for hardcore SSF, it is a great indicator of how bleak drops and options are in that mode. One interesting thing was Mark told us that he would play the weakest character, and he would, I think he, if I don't recall incorrectly, I think he mentioned that he does try it in SSF. I mean, not necessarily hardcore, but in SSF. So we might see some of the drops overall improve as well. I mean, they mentioned as much. We're going to get more crafting options as well. And as for the drops, just the abyssal troves that come from the abyss mechanic should be another vessel for us to get a lot of yellow items, apart from the yellow boxes. And we're going to have a lot more bosses and whatnot. And they've shown us that they are willing to buff the drops as they did in the previous patch, so I'm looking forward to seeing the new state of the game, and I'm sure they will buff drops even further if it's still incomplete. So I'm going to take a green for this one, and pretend I was right about that as well. Trial of Chaos nerf, we didn't see it. I hate Trial of Chaos. We'll see, maybe going in with better crafted items will help get past that hump a lot quicker, but I really hate the Trial of Chaos. We'll see how it works out. I'll talk about that in another video after I actually play the patch. Some skills need to be shared between weapon types, although it is still very early since half the weapon types aren't in the game yet. Yeah, we don't know yet. I still think eventually they will be sharing a lot of the skills between some weapon types. It just makes sense. And the example I used previously, I believe, was when they do eventually bring Cyclone into the game, whether it's an axe skill or a sword skill, are they really going to limit Cyclone to just an axe or a sword? And I think they would bring it onto sword. I think that would be a huge mistake. So we'll see how it works out. They may not want to do it now because things are already a mess and a big problem to balance as is. And it's really hard to animate everything, as they keep mentioning over and over again. So I'm pretty sure in the future, after release though, I don't think we'll see this in the beta, but after release, I think we're going to get a lot of shared skills. So, you know, we'll see. More currency drops in general. Playing Path of Exile 1 again after Path of Exile 2, you really realize how much more currency drops, and it doesn't mean that that's an easier game. It's just more options to deal with problems, etc. Also, the crafting bench, it also made me realize that I was never really a big fan of the crafting bench in Path of Exile 2. I do think I understand their worries about the crafting bench being too much of a fix for a lot of things, but at the same time, I did enjoy the freedom it gave me when I tried it again after not playing it for a while, not playing it being Path of Exile 1. And I do think the rune system is still lacking a bit, although they said they're adding a bunch of new runes and we're going to have more sockets, so that means more runes that we can fit in, so we'll see. One thing that I didn't mention so far is that the rune drops are never enough. I feel like I use up, in SSF especially, I use up my runes very quickly, like your physical damage runes or whatever. Not only do you run out of slots very quickly, but also you don't drop enough of them to sock it in necessarily all the time. So maybe the more deterministic crafting will help us get over that hump, but I think we need a lot more rune drops, or one other system to bridge some of the gaps in the campaign where we struggle to push our character to that next level. We need crafting options or runes to modify boots to have speed. I didn't see them mention anything to do with this, but again, with a little more deterministic crafting, maybe we'll get that in some form. But I think this is the next big thing they have to work on. They really, really, really need to have some way, even if it's a very weak amount of speed. I guess the sprinting kind of solves that issue, but it's still, when you're really slow fighting, like the gorilla boss, the monkey boss. Good luck fighting that thing on a warrior with low move speed boots. You're never going to get around. It's also a deceptively quick boss. I hate the silverback. I hate the Trial of Chaos and I hate the silverback. And I will keep repeating this over and over again. But I hate them. I really, really hate them. But that's just me being bad. So yeah, we need some move speed stuff. Also, I mentioned that we can't use runes on our rings and amulets, which seems like a wasted opportunity. But I have a feeling they're saving something for that later on. I'm sure they've got like some form of... They want to leave themselves some design space to be able to mess around with these things later. And I think they're definitely waiting on additional ring and amulet crafting for later. But yeah, we'll see. Some people will be happy with the changes in addition. It is a given. Hopefully this is limited integration this time around. People seemed a little nicer during the presentation, but I'm already seeing some toxicity. Like people, before even playing the game, just based on what a couple of streamers, and it's not a lot of them, I will say, it's only a few of them, but they'll see the reactions of some of their favorite streamers and just pretend they now know what the patch will be like, and it's just ridiculous. Play the game first. Spoiler alert, a lot of those streamers that are now complaining about how difficult everything is and how useless a lot of the changes are or how bad the game is, they're the ones who end up breaking the game. They're the ones who end up finding workarounds and finding ways to break the game. So your streamers that hate the game, they're going to be playing it for hundreds and thousands of hours. So why torture yourself? Try and approach the game from your point of view. Don't listen to what they have to say. And some of them just want to sell you rage just because it makes them... It brings them more views, let's be real. So, you know, let's pump the brakes on the negativity. Actually play the patch and see what's up. I don't think there's any value in being preemptively negative. Especially when they've shown us time and time again that they will change everything depending on feedback. Just provide your feedback. I'm not saying you should be overly positive. If there's something wrong, tell them. I mean, watch my videos. I love the game, but I'm always complaining about certain aspects, and I'm always talking about how I want things changed. But there's a difference between that and outright insulting them or pretending they're stupid. They're not stupid. They're not stupid. Anyway, that's enough of a rant. We'll see. I'm looking forward to... Overall, I'm looking forward to the patch. We'll see how it works. I'm excited to play Warrior, despite people saying it's dead. I think it'll be fun to see what the new additions are. And I'm sure most of you will also have a good time playing. And I'm not sure I'll make a video until the patch. It doesn't seem like there's much to talk about until we play it. But we'll be revisiting a lot of these points. We'll see. We'll talk about the tree. We'll talk about how good the skills are, particularly Warrior, how much we enjoy the armor and evasion changes, how much we enjoy the new skills. There's going to be a lot to talk about when the game comes out. So until then, take care, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.